turns out sometimes you need to play the game. Sometimes you need to be sanguine rather than perform the kind of student politics that some on the streets of London yesterday have been asking for. So yes, Keir Starmer used all the soft power he could muster to appeal to the president's narcissism in order to try and get a better deal for the United Kingdom. Cash is coming in. We'll hear from the UK head of Palantir, who are making a significant investment in a few moments. And there was love in the room, actually, or at least performatively. But there was also disagreement, politely aired rather than with the usual sort of Trump level of blood and thunder, on a variety of things, whether it was the recognition of a Palestinian state that the UK is about to do. That's an area that Trump disagrees on. Areas over energy. President Trump calling wind power an expensive joke, advising Keir Starmer to drill, baby, drill in the North Sea. I think actually hinting that Keir Starmer is going to give new oil and gas licences for areas in the North Sea, possibly at Rosebank. There is a lot to discuss. Let us speak to someone who was in the room. Natasha Clark is LBC's political editor. Natasha, what can we take from that?
Afternoon, Tom. Yes, we're here at Chequers. We've just come out of that historic press conference. And I think really Trump, what I was thinking as that press conference was going on, was that he absolutely was on his best behaviour. It didn't seem to me like he really wanted to take any swings, either at the Prime Minister, at the press, at anyone. And like you say, there were a few side swipes there about energy. Of course, he was asked about Jimmy Kimmel. But really, the President had opportunity after opportunity to dig the boot in, but chose not to. So actually, I think really what we can conclude from that is Keir Starmer and the King and soft power really does work on the President. He clearly felt happy, comfortable to be here, to be in this environment, and was absolutely lavishing praise on everybody. He really feels that being in this historic 16th century home, he felt right at home, I thought. And obviously, despite the fact he's probably suffering from a bit of jet lag, he's obviously still reeling from the Charlie Kirk last week. I do feel that, the President, we expected him to be a little bit more bad-tempered, perhaps a little bit tetchy at some of those questions. They clearly had agreed for where there were some difficult questions where Keir Starmer would naturally step in, and he clearly felt a little bit more comfortable doing so. But the elephant in the room wasn't mentioned, Jeffrey Epstein, Lord Mandelson, until the very end of that press conference. So actually, I think Keir Starmer, number 10 Downing Street, and the White House will be pretty happy with how that went today.
Yes, there was almost as if a fire blanket had been thrown over the President of the United States, possibly as a result of the marching bands and the state banquet and so if it's the case that Keir Starmer and his team breathe a sigh of relief at the end of today, having got through a press conference, having signed a deal with more investment, where there are no huge gaffes, no big glaring rifts between the two of them, Downing Street will chalk this up as a success, I think.
Absolutely. And I thought the most interesting part of that press conference really was where, you had the moment of maximum danger, I think, was over Palestine, which clearly Donald Trump and the US administration really fundamentally disagree with the UK and France's plans to recognise Palestine as a state. We know that's going to happen next week. And really, you saw when Keir Starmer was asked about, do you understand, October the 7th, that's what Trump had put to Robert Peston of ITV. And Keir Starmer came back saying there will be no role for Hamas in Palestine, full stop. And President Trump turns to him, pats him on the shoulder, good job, good job. The pair clearly really, really do get on. And that, I think, for Donald Trump, clearly overrides any sort of political differences that they have between the two of them. And he said, we don't actually disagree on very much. There is one disagreement between us. We have discussed it. But, they seem quite happy to air their disagreements behind the scenes. It's very, very different, it strikes to me, than relationships that Donald Trump has had with previous prime ministers, and certainly between the relationship that he had when Theresa May was prime minister. You saw all of that spill open onto NATO stages, but Donald Trump seems much more calm, collected, and happy to have those discussions, I think, behind closed doors. Obviously, it's still a mad press conference, of course it is. It's Donald Trump, but it didn't seem to me quite like it had been blown off course, and number 10, I think, will be quite happy with how the Prime Minister and indeed the President handled some of those difficult questions.